Hello, dear friends. Today we will talk about the new coming of Christ. We will partly link this discussion to the previous one, where we analyzed the images in meditations. The question of the coming of Christ can be approached from different angles. Currently, one quarter of humanity's consciousness has shifted from the astral plane to the concrete mental plane, which means that work has begun for this part of people on their intellect. At this stage of development, humanity is exposed to new energies. The impact of new energies as a stimulating influence. And as we have already discussed, this energy stimulates self-awareness in people's consciousness. In other words, such stimulating energy is also called Christ consciousness energy. The very name, Christ consciousness, speaks volumes. Therefore, if we consider the coming of Christ in this context, it can be said that Christ comes in the form of these stimulation energies of Christ consciousness, which must stimulate self-awareness in humanity as a new level of intellectual development. Therefore, every person is also capable of developing their intellect at this level. They must let these energies inside themselves, and thus it can be considered that the person has let Christ into their heart. Because a person's heart is very responsive to the best vibrations, and it is responsible for both their emotional and mental development. New energies stimulate the throat center of a person, which is responsible for intellectual development. Another option I can give is the words of Benjamin Creme. He is a well-known Scottish artist, writer, esoteric, and contactee, who received a message from Maitreya at one time. What did he say about the second coming of Christ? When Christ comes, there will be no other teacher before him. It can be said that he will not come out of any existing spiritual school. He will come to give people the necessary level of knowledge for a new period of development. He will not represent any religion or political party, nor will be the leader of any country. However, the activity he will develop will enable people to understand that there is a man among them capable of great service. And the fact that Christ is among them will be realized. We can also remember what St. John the Apostle said. His words as words coming from Jesus. The great Comforter, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you everything, and he will remind you of what I have told you. I can also draw attention to the fact that in some scriptures it was said that when Christ comes, it will be a time when people will say, "Here is Christ, and here is Christ." That is, there will be many false Christs, and against this background, it will be difficult to see the real Christ. Here we can turn to the images in meditations. In the period of development, when a person has already settled on a specific mental level, that is, the intellect is already sufficiently developed, and the person already begins to be responsible for his own development, his life, and his relationships with others. This is precisely what indicates that a self-aware consciousness has already been born in a person. Since it is self-aware consciousness, as we already discussed at the very beginning, it is also called Christ consciousness. Then comes a moment in meditation When a person experiences an inner state, or it can be called an inner mystery, when he realizes himself as the baby Jesus. Of course, this is an unforgettable experience that a person goes through. It is on this basis that those people appear who, not understanding what this means, begin to perceive themselves and present themselves as a new birth or incarnation of Christ. Of course, if it were only an isolated case, then we could agree with that. But the fact is that I have also experienced this inner state, this inner mystery of giving birth to the Christ child. And many of our people with whom we work, they have also experienced this state of giving birth to the Christ child. But women more often experience this stage of development, that they are like the Virgin Mary, who gave birth to this Christ child. That is why in our world, starting from a certain time, which is beginning of the 90s, a lot of people have appeared who consider themselves either a new reincarnation of Christ or the Mother of God, who has given birth to the Christ child. On this ground, of course, there are many different sects, where the leaders of these sects present themselves as a new reincarnations of Christ. Therefore, I draw the attention of listeners to the fact that this is one of the stages of development. All people go through the same stages of development. And when they reach a strictly defined step on this ladder of development, then everyone, absolutely everyone, regardless of their nationality, ethnicity, everyone experiences the same states, the same inner mysteries. I emphasize that at that stage, when a person already has a self-aware level of consciousness, and one experiences this inner state, the birth of the Christ child, or as the Mother of God gives birth to this child. Therefore, the most important thing is always to appeal a little to your reasonable beginning, in order not to get into trouble. And there are a lot of images of all kinds, which appear during meditation or during dreams. There is such a concept as archetypes. This concept, which is also present in modern psychology, such images, symbols, which can give a person something to understand. And they take into account the way of life, traditions, and many other things. In meditations and in dreams, these images, archetypes, come to a person most often. And it is necessary first of all to think, well, what can this mean for me? And then how will Christ come into our world? It doesn't matter how he comes. He will come, and he will fulfill his mission, fulfill his task and give people what they need. And most importantly, it doesn't matter how it happens. What is important is that people pay more attention to developing their best human qualities. Without this, surely there can be no new and perfect world. Therefore, it is necessary to work on ourselves in order to educate ourselves. And educating ourselves is self-awareness. This is the manifestation of a reasonable beginning, which will not allow man to fall into some extremes or some absurd situations. Therefore, only the development of the best qualities will allow mankind to really move forward. Let's pay more and more attention to this. The next topic we are going to deal with is hell and heaven.